Russian military forces have almost completely left the region surrounding Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, according to American officials. They are now turning toward Ukraine's east, and a new and brutal fight to come. Meantime, evidence of possible atrocities committed by Russian forces mounts throughout newly freed areas of northern Ukraine. In Brussels, European Union leaders met to consider a ban on Russian coal, while Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with alliance leaders at NATO. Our Nick Schifrin traveled to Brussels with Blinken, and he begins our coverage of the war and a warning. Some images in this report are disturbing.
The apocalyptic aftermath of Bucha remains an unaltered hellscape. Residents, survivors, walk past entire city blocks that no longer exist, clutching water that a month of horror made precious. Today was the first time in 4 weeks 57-year-old Vladim Zaborlio and his wife left their basement shelter. They passed discarded Russian uniforms, Russian ammunition, and the Ukrainian soldiers who helped save them.
Honestly, it's the first time I've seen something like this. I served in the army, but something like this? I have never witnessed it. I just can't understand. Why do they need to kill civilians? I don't get it.
Those who died in Bucha are still being buried. Sergei Lahovsky and another Bucha resident lost their closest friend, Igor. And in war, friends try to provide the dead some dignity. They bury Igor in a dirty carpet in a hastily dug hole on the side of the road. But they gave him a final resting place, even if friends and parents will never understand.
His father came and asked where his son was. He went to his mother's to bring some food and disappeared. What for? Why have these beasts shot him?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia should bear proportionate punishment.
After what the world saw in Bucha, sanctions against Russia must be commensurate with the gravity of the occupiers' war crimes.
Authoritarian states cannot be allowed to trample on the rights of democratic countries.
In Brussels today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Australian and European counterparts.
It's really good to be back, except I feel like we've never left.
For a two-day meeting at NATO headquarters, as the U.S. announced more economic punishment on Russia, a ban on all new investment in Russia, additional sanctions on Russia's largest private bank, Sberbank, blocking any transaction with U.S. institutions, a restriction on Russian debt payments, and sanctions on President Putin's eldest two daughters, as well as Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's wife and daughter. At the European Parliament today, leaders discussed blocking Russian coal imports, the first time they've targeted Russia's energy sector. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen predicted more energy sanctions would follow.
But now we have to look into oil, and we have to look into the revenues that Russia gets from the fossil fuels.
But EU leaders have been divided over an embargo on Russian oil and gas. Germany is resisting immediate moves. Eastern flank allies such as Lithuania and Poland have already announced they will stop importing Russian natural gas.
We cannot continue feeding the Russian war machine, regardless of the EU decisions. We're going to phase out Russian oil very soon too, Russian coal immediately, and we are ready to phase out Russian gas by the end of the year.
We spoke to Polish ambassador to NATO, Tomasz Sikorski, today in Brussels.
We're also calling on our partners, on our allies to do the same. And unity is absolutely key when it comes to NATO strength, but unity should not be, going down to the lowest common denominator.
That lowest common denominator meant NATO members decided not to send arms to Ukraine as an alliance, and instead sent arms as individual countries. The argument was NATO didn't want to antagonize Russia. Sikorski says that fear was overblown.
EU is financing hundreds of millions worth of military assistance to Ukraine, and nobody is retaliating with nuclear weapons. So, I think the risks are overstated.
Today, a senior defense official said Russian units had completed their withdrawal from around Kyiv. Western officials tell PBS NewsHour they expect Russians to redeploy to the east and will be ready to launch a large offensive within 2 weeks. The goal? Capture Mariupol, where the suffering remains unending, and connect to land seized across the south. To try and prevent that, the U.S. last night announced $100 million more in military aid for a total of $1.7 billion since the invasion. But Poland and other eastern flank allies are pushing for more.
Ukraine will need more advanced weaponry, sort of systems of higher end. They've been provided by allies with very effective defensive, basic level weaponry, but now they will need to replenish their stocks of artillery systems, tanks, as you have said, air defense systems.
The U.S. and allies are also sending more troops to Eastern Europe, but their numbers are still relatively low. The eastern flank is pushing NATO leaders for a more permanent presence.
We definitely see a need to bolster the defense both qualitatively and quantitatively, and change its nature indeed from tripwire into something some people call forward defense. We need to move from kind of symbolic posture into something that is meaningful.
That might be more likely after the horrors of Bucha, and in the meantime, there's a demand for accountability.
We need to target those who are responsible, and this is first of all the leadership. This is something on which we just cannot go back to the business as usual. Because this is otherwise we will send a signal that this is something you can do, you can conduct, and then just be treated as a normal partner. So that would be basically an encouragement to repeat those actions.
U.S. and European officials are helping Ukraine collect evidence of Russian war crimes. Accountability, Judy, is always difficult, but especially so when the crime scene remains a battlefield.
And Nick, do we know exactly what the NATO foreign ministers, including Secretary of State Antony Blinken, are expected to talk about tomorrow? 6 hours of meetings?
Well, one of the main things that they'll be talking about is the presence of Dmytro Kuleba, the foreign minister of Ukraine. He's expected to be here early tomorrow. Will receive a warm welcome from Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. We'll have many meetings with his foreign minister counterparts who are here in Brussels. He'll also hold a press conference, and that is a rare thing for NATO to be willing to give the mic over to a non-member. And he's expected to call for an EU ban on Russian ships accessing European ports, also a ban on Russian trucks, and, of course, a gas and oil embargo, a demand that President Zelensky in Kyiv just a few minutes ago repeated. He'll also attend an interesting meeting, Judy. He'll address not only NATO's 30 members, but other non-NATO members, including 4 Asian allies and Finland and Sweden. Those are 2 Northern European countries that are not in NATO, but are currently having historic conversations about whether they will join NATO in the coming months. Finally, the foreign ministers will also talk about how to deter Russia in the short term, and that means really new battle groups, new soldiers, more forces sent to southeastern Europe. This is a place, Judy, around the Black Sea, along Ukraine's borders, that NATO hasn't really been focusing on, at least it wasn't before the Russian invasion.
And Nick, beyond the short term, based on your reporting, what are these officials expected to be thinking about, talking about with regard to deterring Russia in the long term?
Yeah, there are crucial questions about more forces. You heard Poland's ambassador calling for more forces in Eastern Europe, more than a tripwire, more than just a series of Western forces who could basically call the cavalry in order to respond to anything that Russia does. Questions of increased readiness of those forces. What would they be able to do if Russia were to cross the border? How quickly would they be able to redeploy and resupply with more forces from the West? Crucial questions about air defense as well. A lot of need in Eastern Europe that simply doesn't exist right now to deter Russian missiles. But of course, Judy, one of the larger challenges that these ministers will have will be to maintain alliance unity. It's one thing for the alliance to have unity over the first 5 weeks or so of this war, but as officials fear this war will last for months, perhaps years, that unity will become increasingly a challenge.
Nick Schifrin, who is reporting on these meetings from Brussels tonight, where it is late. Thank you, Nick.